Begin tonight with a reassurance from President Biden that the U.S. is committed to thwarting a nuclear threat from Iran. The president and Israel's prime minister signed a joint pledge Thursday reaffirming the partnership between the two countries and vowing to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. In remarks after the signing, President Biden highlighted its importance.
You and I also discussed America's commitment to ensuring Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. This is a vital security interest to both Israel and the United States, and I would add, for the rest of the world as well. I continue to believe that diplomacy is the best way to achieve this outcome.
CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me now from Jerusalem. Ed, fair to say the Israeli government is in transition. What isn't in transition? U.S. strategic support for Israel. But nevertheless, in remarks we heard from the two leaders, there is a bit of a divergence in space between what Israel considers proper confrontation of Iran over nuclear weapons and what the Biden administration thinks about it as well.
Yeah, Major, it basically boils down to when the United States might be willing to use military force. In an interview with Israeli television that aired Wednesday night after he arrived here, he signaled that it would be used as a last resort. I think what the Israelis were hoping to hear is that it was something that's front of mind and certainly potentially doable no matter what. There were questions today about when exactly he might be willing to consider the option if, for say, let's say the Iranians don't return to the negotiating table and the attempts to renegotiate the nuclear deal of a few years ago fall apart. The president stayed vague on that. Again, perhaps perturbing the Israelis a bit. But this joint declaration that they signed today, at least on paper, makes clear that the United States and Israel will work together and use all national powers available to them to stop Iran from developing a nuclear bomb. That's a good piece of writing, at least for the Israelis, to demonstrate going into an election season amid their urgent and ongoing concern about the threat of a nuclear attack from Iran and a rising Iran in this region, that the United States has this country's back. So while it may not have been everything Israel wanted, the president is reiterating some pretty bedrock principles in recent decades, at least, of Americans' views of Israel, and making clear that they're going to work with them to try to stop Iran from doing what it may want to do.
And there's some updated information, Ed, it seems to me worth discussing, and I imagine it's been very topical there, which is Iran's declaration that it is purifying uranium more rapidly than it had been in recent months and moving closer to the ability to produce at least one nuclear weapon. It would need a delivery system and all that, but still moving closer.
Yeah, and that's why there was such a desire to hear the president talk about this among the Israelis, why they wanted him to sign this joint declaration today and to reiterate that the United States is focused on stopping it from happening. As he said pretty clearly, the United States will not allow them to get one. Again, how you get to that, whether it's in some larger international agreement, whether it's just working with the Israelis, whether it's using military force to put out whatever Iran may be developing and stopping them from building it, remains to be seen. And it's perhaps that vagueness that concerns at least some Israelis going forward.
And, of course, in the region, the Saudi Arabian government is a counterweight. The president travels there, and there's been some conversations about maybe that being beneficial, or at least in ways that had previously not been true, welcomed by the Israelis. What are you hearing and seeing there?
Well, what we're starting to see is the likelihood that Israel and Saudi Arabia, once seen as foes, in a once unthinkable arrangement, may end up in the coming months, if not years, in more normal and formal diplomatic relationships built around, in part, their mutual concern and worry about Iran. There was pretty open conversation about it among Israeli leaders who said we are ready to have those conversations with Israel, with Qatar, with Kuwait, with Iraq, regarding not only peace generally, but also potentially economic development, technological know-how. We spoke with a former Israeli intelligence chief this week who said part of the reason the Arab world is eager for this to happen is they see Israel, a country that they have spent decades vilifying, relatively succeeding in developing its own economy, in developing a reputable technological sector, creating jobs and education for its younger population, when there are tens of millions of Arab people in these countries who are unemployed, undereducated, eager for work, eager to make use of and perhaps work with technology. And so there's an understanding that it's probably ultimately in everyone's mutual interest to find a way to work together rather than against each other. One thing that will have to get sorted out in the midst of that that there was no resolution of this week is, of course, the future of Israel and the Palestinian people, and whether or not they're ever going to be able to come together in sorting out the potential for a two-state solution. Because for some of those Arab countries, that's going to be a sticking point or something that they're going to want to see progress on.
And the president will meet with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Anything likely to come out of that?
We believe that there will be, in essence, a desire or an example or action taken that restores to some extent what the status quo was before the Trump administration in terms of assisting the Palestinian people with economic aid, with closer diplomatic ties and other societal ties. The president notably visiting a hospital in East Jerusalem that's part of a network of a Palestinian medical association that provides care across the Palestinian world. The Israelis had asked that one of them, a government official, accompany the president to these meetings, since in their view, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. The United States policy, of course, is that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. So why wouldn't they be allowed to go with him to go see the Palestinians? The president, White House said, no, we'll do this on our own. That is seen as a point of pride here on the street among the Palestinian people, an example of this president who knows the region well, engaging with President Abbas and the Palestinians on his own, in essence, as equals. And whether that is more symbolic or going to lead to something remains unclear, but is an example of how this president is treating the relationship with the Palestinian people differently. We will learn much more tomorrow about what exactly the United States is preparing to do. But keep in mind, while they're happy to get the checks, ultimately what many Palestinian officials would tell you is what they really want is U.S. support in getting Israel to talk to them about freedom of movement, about establishing a Palestinian state, and, in essence, allowing the Palestinian people to operate as equals in this region, which for years they believe they've not been able to do.
Long simmering issues in the region. Ed O'Keefe with all the details from Jerusalem. Thank you.